Hi, this is Burke Lyle, and welcome to YouTube once again. So, right now, yesterday in sports, it was Tuesday night. I watched two really good games from two different sports. So I watched the Caps versus the Kings, and then I watched as well kind of Bucks Pelicans. So, the Caps Kings game, it's the Capitals who are probably going to win the President's Trophy. The Bruins might catch them, maybe the Blues, probably the Capitals playing against a not very good LA Kings team. You kind of come off that Sunday game against Pittsburgh where they lost 4-3 in regulation. Super Bowl Sunday, NBC National Game of the Week, and just a fired up atmosphere. And then you lose to Pittsburgh, and then you come in and you play a Kings team on a Tuesday night in February, right after the Super Bowl, where attendance might be slightly down, obviously. If you were a fan who's not doesn't have season tickets and you just spent all that money on Pittsburgh, I don't know if you want to go to another game. And that game appeared to be kind of boring. I mean, for the first 3.5 periods, the first 53 minutes of the game, the Caps had just one goal. It was 2-1 Kings, and it appeared that the Kings were going to win. They got off to a slow start and having just lost the game. And then the grade 8 scored a goal. I think Oshie was pinned to the corner and kind of just passed it to the grade 8 right in front of the net, tie game. So again, Ovi had 695 goals going in. And then the second goal, I think it just happened just a minute later. I think John Carlson made a long ice kind of pass down the ice, and grade 8 kind of skated to the net and just tied the game. I think what happened is shot it, rebound, put it back in. I mean, if you've seen the video highlights, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, I'm trying to describe it the best way I can. So yeah, that goal right in front of the net, and then that was 6:97. All of a sudden, the Caps had the lead, and I was fired up for all three, or for the first two, and then the third one. So the grade 8 has a hat trick, right? Empty net. I thought, if the Kings pull their goalie, the grade 8's going to get a hat trick. And he did, and just probably passed it from approximately the blue line, his own blue line, so in the Capitals zone where the goalie is all the way to the all the way into the Kings net. So all of a sudden, you go from that to 2-1 kind of boring game. Oh, maybe they can just get into overtime, find a way to score a goal, maybe just get a point out of this. Instead, they get the outright win, and the grade 8 gets a hat trick. So he ties the game, gives them the lead, and seals the game all in one. And that gives him 698 goals in his career. And I just, this morning, I read the Washington Post, I listened to Grant and Danny talk about it, and they proposed a question. Should we take the grade 8 for granted? No, we should not. I mean, the grade 8 is the best goal scorer, probably one of the best goal scorers in NHL history. When you talk about, you have Wayne Gretzky's obviously number one, but in this era, since we're in an era where it's as hard as ever to score goals, I think it's gotten a little easier since the grade 8, since Ovechkin's come in the league. As, say, now than it was maybe 15 years ago, but still, very hard to score goals. Grade 8 just scored his 40th goal of the year, so he's at 698, so he's about to get to 700. And I think NBC Sports Washington had a contest to see, okay, when is he going to score it? I guess maybe he's cooled off a little bit. He's going to score February 13th against Colorado. Well, in this game alone, put on 3 goals in a game where you thought, maybe he's not going to score. To just scoring 3 goals in the back half of the third period, crowd going crazy, and I was going crazy. I couldn't just help but I was just fired up about Ovechkin really all night last night after that happened, or certainly after the game. And the question is, when will we get a 700? Well, knowing the schedule, they don't play for another 3 days from now, so they have 3 days off. They'll play the Flyers on Saturday night in Washington. I checked tickets long and expensive. I think tickets for that game are over $80 now. They could be even more expensive than they're playing the Islanders. I believe they'll be in Capital One Arena. In fact, they would be since they've already played the Islanders twice in Long Island. So that will be in Capital One Arena. So it's two chances to get to that 700 club in Washington. They kind of go West Coast, Colorado, Phoenix, Vegas. So the question is, do you see Ovechkin score his 600th goal in Washington, where everyone's watching, or does he score it in maybe a Thursday night game in Colorado, or a game in Phoenix, or wherever, or even in Vegas, the place where Ovechkin raised the cup and also scored a goal in that game? So that's the question when it occurs. My guess was last night was Colorado. Of course, that was before. That was during the game when that question came up. That was before he scored 3 goals. So now it could happen the way it's Ovechkin. I mean, he had a hat trick on January 13th against the Hurricanes. Or no, scored 2 goals that game. Then had a hat trick on the 16th against the Devils. That was 3 weeks ago. And then had another hat trick against the Islanders on the 18th, right before the conference championship games, and as their bye started, and obviously was suspended for the game against the Canadiens coming out of the All-Star break. So, again, I think what I've heard is 16 goals in the last 10 games, and something like 14 in the last 7, so that's an average of basically 2 goals a game. And what I've heard people say is this is the greatest goal-scoring stretch of his career since, again, the grade A has scored 50 goals many times. And is probably going to score 50 again. I mean, about approximately what they played, between something like 54 games this year. Already has 40, and then, so about 2/3 of the way there. Right, so it's on pace to score 60. Basically 60, right? So if he gets to 60, that would put him at 718 to be exact. Which it seemed like just yesterday that Ovechkin scored goal number 500. Or scored. What it really seems like just yesterday is when he scored goal number 600, because I remember that magical Stanley Cup run that year. This year, if Ovechkin, is going to get to 700 unless just his season ends, or regular season ends, and would-be season ends, basically gets a bad injury with 2 months left to play. So that's the question. 700 seems right there since, and again, to top off the 700 goal season, what if Ovechkin could win another Stanley Cup, right, this year? And look, as a Capitals fan, and certainly as a Nationals fan, and kind of a DC sports fan in general, I want to, I just went to that Nationals parade. I want to see the Capitals win another Stanley Cup. I want to go to another parade. I want to see another championship in Washington. But just the level of greatness we are seeing from the great A's, just incredible. Probably, and I feel very lucky to be able to watch it. Pretty much every night. Really, for the last. I've seen Ovechkin play quite a bit since, really I was a kid, really the last 12 years. I kind of really started to follow the Capitals really during when the kind of Rock the Red era started. So and then his contract is going to be up after next year, so 2021. So that's been a lot of fun to see with Ovechkin. So moving on to the next game I watched. So I watched Pelicans-Bucks. And what that game represented was 2 things. One, we were seeing the best player in the league right now, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. People can say, oh, it's still LeBron. I don't think it's LeBron anymore. I think right now it's Giannis, or people say it's maybe James Harden, since yes, Harden won the MVP 2 years ago, but I'm going to say Giannis just due to his ability. Who in the league will fly down the floor fastest? Who has better length than Giannis? Who is more athletic than Giannis right now? I'm not talking about, somebody could win a dunk contest. I'm talking about, who's playing the All-Star game. Since you see just since sometimes you see like his left hand, like you see him drill down the court, all of a sudden his left hand just does easy dunks, with the left hand, with his non-dominant hand or whatever. You see those spectacular dunks, and then not only that, I think his passing ability. I say he's a very good passer. I see him make some nice passes. His assist totals aren't. It's not like he's gonna average a triple double or anything like that. He's not gonna get 10 assists a game, but he can get 5, which is fairly reasonable, especially for someone his size. And then one of the league leaders in rebounds is scoring over 30 points a night. Obviously, he's gonna finish probably, I'm saying, second MVP this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he won yet another MVP. The way since the play of James Harden has declined, at least recently. Question is, who's going to be the MVP? I'm going to probably say Giannis again, since you have the best team in the NBA once again. So that's the Buck side of the story. On the other side, you have the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion Williamson, who just returned, I think, 2 weeks ago, and I saw that game. I saw a little bit of some other games. And I think Zion last night was something like 5 for. Really didn't play well. I think something like 5 for 18 from the field. And I saw some flashes of Zion for sure, but that's not the point about how well he played last night. The point is, I think he's played really well. I think he's averaged about 20 points a game since he's come back from the injury. And yes, the Pelicans are not going to make it to the playoffs this year. It's going to be really going to be a stretch. But the point is, we get to see Zion for the rest of this year, and I think the Pelicans will continue to improve. And they didn't give up on a lost season. And really, next year, I think is going to be a year where I think the Pelicans are going to make it to the playoffs. The question is, are they a really good 8 seed that wins? I think they're going to win 45, 50 games next year. And depending on how strong the conference is, would they be a 7th or an 8th seed, or would they be higher than that? And the question is, what is their ceiling long term, since you've brought in Brandon Ingram, who is now a 25 point per game scorer? Does that continue when obviously Zion gets a lot more touches? Since again, most of the year Zion has not been available still, that shows Ingram has potential to score. Does Lonzo Ball click? Maybe he's shown flashes again, but has not lived up to the NBA hype. So you have those factors right there with you right now. And the question is, so those factors right there. So I think right now you're seeing kind of now Giannis Antetokounmpo, the best player in the league right now. And then I think Zion, as LeBron gets older, will be the best. Could be very well be the best player in the NBA, say 2 or 3 years from now, when he still is in his early, kind of going into mid-20s. So that was I thought that was a good. Well, it wasn't an NBA Finals matchup. I thought you saw kind of 2 premier players that will be superstars in 5 years from now. Now Giannis will be right around 30 then. And the question is, it's just another question to propose. Does Giannis leave the Bucks when his contract's up after next year, 2021? And if so, if he does, where does he go? I don't know. That's a discussion for a whole nother day. But the question is, if Giannis remains a Buck, is this a finals matchup in the down the road, say in 2 or 3 years from now? Like if the Pelicans can really accelerate, like Tim Duncan in his second year won a championship. That happens sometimes, but it's usually rare. Kobe, when he was 21, 22, 23, had already had 3 straight championships. Of course, came to the league at 18 and played alongside Shaq. So again, that's something you can talk about. So the question is, do we see a Zion-like performance like LeBron James, say, in a couple of years in the NBA Finals at a very young age? Again, I guess it's hard to say. I think the West is much more competitive and much better than, say, what the East was. Since, remember, the Eastern Conference, and I've talked about this many times, in the 2000s, it was wide open. It changed a lot every year who was in the finals, and usually the teams from the East lost to teams like the Lakers, and then lost to teams like the Spurs in the finals for kind of the first for quite a while in that decade. So you have those things. But yes, what I saw last night was two superstars, one present and one certainly future. Obviously Zion has a very small sample size, but I just thought that was fun to mention. So that was kind of last night what I saw in sports. And again, I bet next year, if it's Pelicans Bucks, I think the league has to put those games either as an 8 o'clock TNT game, a front of a doubleheader, or a 9:30 back end start, being that both of those teams are in Central Time. So again, are these the two teams that are the future of the NBA? With the Bucks, if Giannis stays, then yes, I think they will be finals contenders. I think they could have a potential dynasty in the making, especially if they win a title this year. That's if Giannis stays. If he opts to leave, then all of a sudden, what are the Bucks? Well, it could be similar to what the Raptors are. Yes, they're still good, but they're not quite a finals contender anymore. And the question is, how good are the Pelicans going to be if Zion chooses to stay? Since I always think about Chris Paul and AD leaving, the question is, can the Pelicans this time build a title contender around Zion? Like, since obviously the Hornets failed not only to build a title contender, most years they didn't even have a playoff caliber team around Anthony Davis. Or same thing with the New Orleans Hornets. They couldn't build a good enough team around, say, Chris Paul. So again, talking about that, Zion versus Giannis was a lot of fun to watch last night. And obviously I've seen Giannis play many times, putting up 30 points a game, playing on national TV. The question is, we will see Zion a lot on national TV this year. I think the rest of this year, the Pelicans were scheduled a lot earlier, before Zion was even ready to play. So that'll be fun. And not only that, something I did not bring up, they were guarding each other. Not every possession, but at least some possessions, especially early in the game, they're kind of guarding each other. So that was fun to watch. So again, heavyweight duels in the NBA. The very best players playing against each other can be a lot of fun to watch. So while yes, that was just a Tuesday night game with the Bucks being the best team in the NBA, while the Pelicans were a team that was probably worse than maybe what many people thought, especially since Zion was out. Question is, will that one day be an NBA Finals matchup? And that's an interesting question to ask. Will it be an NBA Finals matchup? I think it will. If Giannis stays in Milwaukee, I think it will be an NBA Finals matchup. So again, that was my night in sports last night, and that is all I have to say on that.